Well, what a weekend we've just had in the EFL. Commiserations to both Sheffield United and Leyton Orient, but a huge congratulations to Sunderland and Charlton Athletic for both winning their playoff finals over the weekend. Sunderland will be playing Premier League football next season, and they did it in the most typical Sunderland fashion. These have been three of the most dramatic playoff games we've seen in recent history from the Black Cats, from that ridiculous last-minute goal from Dan Ballard in the semi-finals to Tommy Watson coming up with that moment in the dying embers of that game against Sheffield United at Wembley. And I'm happy to admit that Sunderland proved me wrong in this playoff campaign. You know, coming into the playoffs with 5 consecutive defeats in the league, they just about got through those 2 games against Coventry, didn't they? And going into the final once again, I thought that it might be a case of one step too far. You know, Sheffield United were definitely coming into that final as the favourites. I think rightly so. Obviously, the league table showcased that. And in the early stages of the game, it looked like Sheffield United were going to be the team that were going to be bossing this one. Obviously, had some big chances early on. When they did take the lead, they looked like they were going to be in a really commanding position. And ultimately, the key part of this game comes when Sheffield United think they've got that second goal. VAR intervenes, and then Sunderland, some of the changes they made in that second half ultimately proved to make the difference. So Tommy Watson with that parting gift for the Sunderland fans to get them back into the Premier League. And Sheffield United are just going to have to go again in the Championship next season. What will be interesting from a Sheffield United perspective is how many of their players get poached away from them this summer. That's going to be a focus of today's video when we talk about some transfer news. And I've also got to say a massive congratulations to Charlton Athletic for winning promotion back to the Championship as well. It was fun having Charlton in the Championship a few years ago, and then now back in the second tier. Will be plenty of fun having Nathan Jones especially back in the league. But an absolutely massive day and performance from their fans at Wembley, beating Leyton Orient in the final. I've got to admit, from top to bottom next season, the Championship is already looking really competitive. But the focus of today's video will be on transfers, and we've got a lot to go through. Starting out with a bit of managerial news, and that's that Southampton have announced the hiring of Will Still. This one had been heavily rumoured after he'd left his coaching role in France. For quite some time, Will Still has been linked with jobs in England, a number of Championship vacancies that pop up. He always tends to be in amongst the bookies' favourites to land one of those roles. He's going to be coming into Southampton next season, who, I mean, they've been way off the pace in the Premier League this season, but automatically coming down as a parachute team with the quality in that squad for the Championship, you'd expect them to be amongst the promotion favourites. He's certainly got a big task on his hands, though, to get rid of that negative momentum that's been around the Saints this season. And it's not the news that Bristol City fans wanted to be hearing on this bank holiday, but as of recording it, is being reported that Norwich will be making an official approach for Liam Manning, and it seems like they're happy to pay whatever compensation it would take. It's been reported that Manning's compensation to get him out of Bristol City is around about 800k. This definitely would disrupt Bristol City going into next season. There's no doubts about that. I'm sure the club have already been speaking to a few players, targets that they're looking to bring in for next season, and Manning potentially leaving at this stage could have a huge knock-on effect in that regard. Obviously done a really good job at Ashton Gate. I know that in the playoffs against Sheffield United, they didn't really look like they were quite up to that level, but finishing 6th with that Bristol City squad was not to be underestimated, and you can see why Norwich, after the season they've just had, how much they underperformed. You can see why they like the look of a manager like Manning, who is absolutely their #1 target right now. So Bristol City Norwich fans, what's your reaction to that in the comments down below? In terms of some done deals that have gone through in recent days, we've seen Jamie Patterson signing for Plymouth Argyle upon his contract with Coventry expiring. Patterson, someone who only briefly really featured for Coventry in the second half of the season, but dropping down to League One, I could definitely see what he could offer that Plymouth side for next season. And one of the big stories surrounding Sunderland's promotion to the Premier League is the fact that they will have triggered Enzo Lafay's buy obligation. It was in his contract when he was loaned out to Sunderland that should the Black Cats be promoted to the Premier League, they would have the obligation to purchase the creative midfielder for a fee of around about 19.3 million, which would be a club record fee. Listen, I'm in no doubt Sunderland are going to have to spend a hell of a lot of money this summer to get their squad up to Premier League standards, but they've already made a start in doing that, and Enzo Lafay will be back at Sunderland on a permanent basis next season in the Premier League. Now, Sunderland fans, what's your verdict on that one? But there are some of the done deals that have gone through in recent days. Now, without any further ado, let's jump into the rumours. So I think over these next few weeks, it's quite obvious that we're going to have a lot of transfer news regarding Sheffield United. There's potentially going to be a lot of movement both in and out of Bramall Lane until the start of this new championship campaign. And one of their most in-demand players this summer is definitely going to be Gustavo, and it's got to be said, it's really hard to see him playing championship football again next season. Just been named as the championship player of the season. Another really good year in the second tier. There is definitely going to be Premier League interest. Now, links that have resurfaced since Sheffield United lost that playoffs final is to Leeds United. If you cast your mind back to last summer, Leeds were really interested in the creative midfielder then. They had an offer rejected by Sheffield United, but the fact that the Blades weren't able to secure promotion back to the Premier League does mean that they are in a bit of a predicament when it comes to potentially holding on to some of their star players this summer. Now, Heimer is still on the contract with Sheffield United until 2027, and even if he is going to leave this summer, you'd still expect them to land a really decent fee for him. But for you Leeds United fans, is this the sort of deal that you'd be looking to pursue this summer? Would you be keen on Leeds reigniting their interest in Heimer, or do you think your club will be looking at other options elsewhere, potentially from across Europe, let's say? Another player that the Blades might struggle to keep hold of this summer is Michael Cooper. I definitely think there's going to be Premier League interest in the goalkeeper after proving himself as one of the best shot stoppers in the second tier over these past couple of years with both Sheffield United and Plymouth. The good news for Sheffield United is the fact that even if Cooper was to leave this summer, you'd still fancy them to flip him for a considerable profit. He was signed for a base fee of $2 million that could rise to $4 million with add-ons. But Premier League money talks. There's already been, murmurings of months gone by that Leeds were potentially looking at one point. There's rumours that if James Trafford moves on at Burnley this summer, they could perhaps go in for Cooper as his replacement. For Sheffield United, I definitely think there'll be 2-3 big departures this summer from that squad. But from a Sheffield United perspective, it's not all bad news. As there will be plenty of players going out this summer, there are also going to be plenty of players coming in. And it is important to stress that while Blades fans will definitely be feeling low right now, they're going to be one of the biggest fish in the Championship once again next season, and that applies to the transfer market. So according to the latest reports coming out, QPR defender Jimmy Dunn is expected to be offered a contract by Sheffield United this summer. He is out of contract with QPR, who are probably still holding out a faint chance that maybe he'll sign a contract extension with them. He's been one of their best performing players this season, fairly versatile, can play at fullback or centre half, but it's thought that Sheffield United will offer him a contract in the hopes of luring him to Bramall Lane. They did try and sign the defender back in January, but ultimately Sheffield United and QPR couldn't agree on a fee, so the deal didn't happen in the end. The fact that he is out of contract with QPR at the end of the season, though, should make it a bit more of a straightforward deal for Sheffield United to complete. The future of Charlton's Thierry Small has got even more interesting because of the fact that Charlton have won promotion to the Championship. Now, it's been well documented that Charlton have already offered Small a new contract. They're trying to get him tied down to a new deal. He's yet to commit his future to the club, and if he does decide to turn down that contract offer, he's got plenty of other potential suitors in the Championship. We've had both Preston and Millwall being linked with the versatile player for quite some time now. Blackburn, another club who I've seen linked with him recently as well. Charlton's chances of keeping hold of him definitely have been boosted by the fact that they've been promoted, but it's certainly no guarantee. I mean, let's think back to last year, for example, when Oxford won promotion to the Championship in the League One playoff final. They arguably lost their best player on a free, with Josh Murphy deciding to leave and sign for fellow Championship club Portsmouth instead. So there is history for this sort of thing happening. It is also worth pointing out as well that if Small does indeed decide against signing his contract renewal with Charlton, whoever signs him will still have to pay a compensation fee because of the player's age. So there still will be a bit of money involved in this one. Now, if Thierry Small is going to be leaving Charlton at the end of the season, one player who they could potentially be looking to bolster that defensive line in his absence with could be Jordan Lawrence-Gabriel. They have been linked with the out-of-contract former Blackpool star. The 26-year-old has spent the last 4 or so years playing at Bloomfield Road, but is a free agent this summer. It's interesting because he was linked with a move to the Championship last summer, if I remember rightly, with Oxford being particularly interested. They weren't able to strike a deal in the end, but Charlton have now been credited with interest with him. Regarding Nottingham Forest midfielder Lewis O'Brien, there's still a real tussle over a number of Championship clubs and teams from abroad who are looking to sign the midfielder on loan. Now, it is worth pointing out he is on a big contract at Nottingham Forest in terms of his reported weekly wage, so whoever offers a higher percentage of covering that wage, Forest are probably more keen to loan him out to that side. You've got Preston, Swansea, Wrexham, Valencia all in the mix to sign the midfielder at the moment. He obviously spent the second half of last season out on loan with Swansea, did really well there and already has a good rapport with that fan base. Wrexham probably have a bit more money to spend than some of those other clubs, but I mean Valencia can't be ruled out of that equation either, so a lot of clubs still going in for him this summer. There is a fair bit of speculation going on around Bae Jun-ho right now and his long-term future at Stoke City. There's been a few murmurings that his agent has been going around looking for potential moves for his client this summer. Now, going back to last summer, there was quite a bit of interest in the Stoke City playmaker. I believe Stoke signed him in 2023 for a fee of around about £2 million. If they were to sell him at this point, you would fancy them to flip him for a profit. The trouble Stoke would probably have with potentially moving him on is the fact that you can definitely see that he's a really talented player. He's only 21 years old as well, so he's got bags of potential, but I don't see a mega offer coming in for him right now, because he's just coming off the back of a season where his end product hasn't perhaps been the best. You know, he got 3 goals and 5 assists in the Championship last season for Stoke. Talent-wise and on the eye, I think he's really good, and I think Stoke fans have seen real glimpses of that quality. But in order for you to sell a in order for you to get the big bucks for a player in the Championship who's a creative midfielder like that, you know, you need to be looking at 20 goals and assists combined, something like that really, don't you? But by all accounts, his agent is on the lookout for potential suitors that are out there, so his long-term future, it's definitely one to keep your eye on over these next few weeks. Aaron Cresswell is set to leave West Ham at the end of the campaign with his contract there running out, and there are a few suitors already emerging for the fullback. You've got Wrexham in the Championship who are supposedly interested, and Leeds United as well I've also seen sniffing around. Now, this one would really depend on what Cresswell wants to do moving forward. You know, there is potential Premier League suitors out there for him, but I think it would be fair to say that if he does go to Leeds United, he probably wouldn't be a regular starter there, be more of a squad player coming in and out, rotating with someone else in that position. Whereas if he was to go to a club like Wrexham, let's say, he'd probably be pretty much a guaranteed starter there, you know, fitness permitting, wouldn't he? We've said it time and time again on the channel recently, it's been Wrexham's business model to go after these experienced pros, and someone like Cresswell would add a whole lot to that Wrexham dressing room, not just in terms of quality on the pitch, but experience and know-how behind the scenes as well. I think over these next few weeks, in the case of Wrexham especially, we're definitely going to be seeing them linked with a lot of Premier League free agents like Cresswell, aren't we? But there you guys have it, that will wrap it up for today's video. Thank you very much for tuning in. As always, if you've seen anything else going on around the EFL, make sure to let me know about it in the comments down below. Apart from that though guys, thank you very much for tuning in, and I'll see you all in the next one.